Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and I'm unusually excited about today's episode because we get a chance to interview one of my favorite people. Today is a person that I've known since he was a little boy. He and my little brother were very good friends growing up here in Ponchatoula. They played ball together, they hung out together, just like their grandfather, like our dad and his grandfather did once upon a time. And so these are family stories that go back generations. And it's been a real pleasure for me to see him grow up to be a fine young man and community leader as he is now. And it's one of the few people in town that we can say is kind of truly world famous. And we're going to get into his career and how he's traveled the world. And anyway, just an all around good guy and great at what he does. One of the very few people in the world that can say he has definitively been the best at what he does at one point in time, and not just his opinion, but judged by the pros. I bring with you with no further ado, Brandon Bennett. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Parker. I'll tell you what, the feeling is mutual, my friend. And like you said, our families have been friends longer than I can remember, certainly. But
absolutely. I'm pushing 50, and the Bennetts and Larisons were friends long before I came along. So it's pretty neat, and we're really blessed to have your Papa Sonny and my dad Eddie still kicking around in their 80s. They're neat guys, and they have a special friendship. So what we do on this show, Brandon, is we love to talk about with folks like you that have been in Ponchatoula forever. And of course, here we've had the benefit of interviewing your daddy and the grandfather before on the show, and gotten their perspective of what Ponchatoula was like in the really old days. But for you, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, what was it like for you here in town?
I tell people when I'm out of town somewhere and they ask me where I'm from and where I grew up, I say, it was kind of like Mayberry. Everybody knew everybody. And like you. Yeah. The funny story that I always tell everybody is when I got my driver's license, or actually right before getting it, my dad told me, listen, if I even hear somebody thought they saw you acting a fool in this vehicle, you were going to be riding a cheese wagon. And I knew that it was very likely that no matter what I did, somebody was going to see me that knew who I belonged to.
Absolutely. And I lived that. I remember one time my parents were in San Francisco, California. And bear in mind, this was the 90s before you had cell phones and social media and all that. And I got a call before the sun came up the next day about everything I'd done wrong. Dad had those eyes and ears on the streets. So yeah. I can relate to where you're coming from. It was a different time. I mean, Mayberry, I think the town even at one time used that in its official, I think they called it the Mayberry of the Deep South or something. But it very much was kind of a Mayberry-esque, thing. Now, what I remember of you growing up, your dad, your grandfather coaching football, what you were very athletic and into sports and stuff. What all did you do for fun around here, and kind of who did you run around with?
I loved football for as long as I can remember. I played baseball growing up, and I played a little bit of basketball, but definitely wasn't my sport. I couldn't jump high enough for any of that stuff, but
it makes two of us.
And what's funny about this one sport that I tried, and I don't know how old I was, but however old you can be when you can first play soccer, I did that for one season. And my dad said after the first game, I came off the field and said, you know what, I think I want to try baseball because you only have to run from here to there and stop.
Right.
So, but the irony of that is my daughter, who's a senior this year, has lettered 4 years on the soccer team at the high school.
In soccer, oh, wow.
Love soccer,
That's neat. Well, I'm with you. As I recall, I think, and maybe it was the same for you, back then you couldn't start football till like 5th grade, right?
Right.
So if you were looking for a fall sport, soccer, which was in my day kind of the new sport in town, it hadn't been, wasn't around when our dads were here, and it had not been around long whenever I played. But that was it. You either played soccer or you sat out until football arrived in the 5th grade. So like you, I hated all that long distance running. I was too short and wide and with these little legs. It wasn't my favorite sport. But my best friend Will was a 4-year captain and played in Europe and all over. So to each his own, man. It's interesting to see how that works. And sometimes in the same family, one kid loves this sport, another loves that. You just kind of never know. Um, Now, what I want to get a feel for before we ask about your career, because you had kind of what I would call an unusual start in that not only did you become very famous and travel very far, but that happened early. It wasn't like you had to build yourself up until you were 40 and then hit it big. So, before you started traveling and performing, when you were kind of just here in Ponchatoula all the time, 7 days a week, what are some lessons you learned and people who impacted you at that station in your life?
Gosh, that's a great question. I mean, if I want to go back, I guess I could go back to high school. Even I remember Coach Jerry Myers. He was the defensive line coach when I
Hmm.
was in high school, and I was on the offensive line, and so they practiced on the other side of the field. But he was always really energetic, and he was hollering, but he would holler at you if you did something that you weren't supposed to do, but he was just as enthusiastic if you did something you were supposed to do. And that had an impact on me because I wanted to be a coach. That's what I thought I was going to do when I graduated. And he was somebody that stuck out to me. I was like, I think that's really important as a coach to be as enthusiastic about the good and as you are about the bad, or vice versa.
Right.
And
Yeah, because a lot of coaches are quick to chew that butt, but they don't really give you your credit on the other side, or there's just a lot more stick than there is honey, if you will.
yeah, yeah. And I saw it in the players that he coached day in and day out. Those defensive linemen would have gone to the moon and back for him, and
Hmm.
not even playing
And I
for him.
bet that serves you well once you had your own band and had to do leadership, whether it was in the band or now at work in the business or just whatever. I mean, those are lessons that'll serve you a lifetime.
Yeah, and I think playing sports, you learn how to work with other people, and you run into all kinds of different. When you get out into the real world, I mean, you run into people with all kinds of different, personalities and things, and so it's definitely beneficial, I think, for when you're coming up and you're playing an organized sport and you learn things that you don't even realize you're learning. I think, um,
Hmm.
but yeah, man, he was one of the first ones, and I actually just realized a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know, I could be wrong about this, but I wanted to be a football coach, and so
Hmm.
our head football coach Jeff Lyons, he set up a meeting with me at LSU. I wanted to go to LSU, and I went and met with Jimbo Fisher because Jerry DiNardo wasn't there that day, but it was after the football season. So I'm pretty sure what I just figured out is the reason Jerry DiNardo wasn't there is because that was the next year that the next football season was where Nick Saban took over.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So had I taken that opportunity, um, I would have, possibly been learning under, Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban,
Yeah.
and now, what's gosh, shame on me, the guy's coming from Ole Miss. I think he was
Oh,
in that mix. Uh,
I'm trying to think. So I know Will Muschamps was on that, but he was on defense. So, yeah. So a heck of a staff there. But and how weird is that though? You go and just meet the head coach Jerry DiNardo, who's kind of a name that only lived on for years to come because they had a restaurant still for a while until it became Rufino's. But meanwhile, Jimbo Fisher would himself become a national champion, not just under Saban, but in his own life. That's really cool, man. It just kind of there's this sliding door effect that none of us can really anticipate. That's wild. Well, let's switch gears a little bit into that kind of next chapter of moving out of the house. And you didn't go into the hallowed halls of LSU football, but you did go into performance and you hit it big. And how did you get into music and you tribute artist for Elvis? And how did that all come to be?
well, it was really something I tell people that it chose me because I was a very shy kid growing up, so shy that if I was walking down the hall at high school or, especially before then, I was looking down at the floor because I didn't want to make eye contact with anybody. And I guess I was afraid of, I don't know what I was afraid of. I really to this day don't know what I was afraid of, but I was just so
Wow,
shy.
that's hard to believe, man. It's hard.
Yeah.
Well, how could you have come from there to where you are and have
Yeah.
been?
And we had gone several times growing up with my grandparents and my parents up to Gatlinburg or Branson on vacation. And we happened to go, I may have been my sophomore or junior year, we took a trip up there, and we went and saw a tribute show that had an Elvis in it. And it was around that time that people started telling me they thought I looked like Elvis. So that was kind of buzzing around a little bit. And we went and saw the show. They had
Give me a reference here as to age. How old were you at that time?
16, I guess, okay. 15, 16, something like that.
So this was shortly after you got that talk, or maybe just before you got that talk about getting your license and how you better behave.
Yeah, well, so
same moment in time.
I just barely made it, and I got my license at 15. I was like one of the last few people to get
it. Cool.
Before they changed. Oh man, yeah, I remember worrying about that so much because I would cut yards, during the summer, and my birthday's in August. And I remember I was cutting yards to save up money. I was going to be buying gas and whatever, and getting a vehicle, and all I had in the back of my head was the whole time was like, I know this they're going to change this age on me right before I get my license. I'll wait a whole another year.
I can relate. I had a different, not quite as essential as a driver's license, but to a teenage kid, especially a wild one like myself, very important. The drinking age was 18 when I was a kid. And when we turned 18, we could legally drink. And then before I turned 19, they changed it. So I've seen that kind of window. It's important to be on the right side of it. Let me interrupt you real quick before you go on. We have a comment coming in here. And of course, folks, we're here with Brandon Bennett. We're about to get into his career in music. But we have the wonderful Miss Rosemary Gardner has chimed in with a comment here that I want to share with you, Brandon. She says, it's great to see you, and please give your love to your grandmother, Miss Rosetta. And she mentions fond memories of her days at PHS. That's got to feel good coming from a sweetheart like Miss Rosemary, huh?
Absolutely. And I will tell her, Miss Rosemary, I'll see her tomorrow. I'm lucky enough to get to see her just about every day now, her and football. So
that's really neat, man. Well, thanks for indulging that interruption, but I knew you wouldn't mind once you saw who that was from. And I want to say to anybody viewing live, most people see this show later or hear it on Apple or wherever you receive podcasts. But for those that are viewing us live on Facebook, know that you have the ability to comment. So if you'd like to chime in, whether just to say something nice as Miss Rosemary has, or ask Brandon a question or whatever, please do so. As your host, I'll do my best to get to your comments before the show ends. So circling back, we're with Brandon Bennett. We're talking about how he's kind of got in the early stages of maybe sort of going into music. People are telling you, Brandon, you look like Elvis. You're 15, you're 16, but you're coming off a real shy kind of natural background. Yeah. So what's the next step? How do you get from there to the next, part of the story?
So we saw this tribute show that had an Elvis in it, and I still to this day don't know why I said this, why I thought this, believed this, whatever. But we were all in a vehicle that I think my grandpa had borrowed from Mr. Tank Powell. Mm-hmm. And it was a van. My grandpa was driving. I was sitting right behind him. The rest of my family's all in the car, and we're talking about the show. And I just remember piping up and saying, I could do that. And everybody in the car busted out laughing. My grandpa almost ran into a car in the back of us. He was laughing so hard. I mean, in the front of us, because he was laughing so hard. Slammed on the brakes. It was like, how are you gonna do this? You're too shy. How is that gonna happen?
So nobody takes you seriously at that point. Nobody. That's wild.
And so then, back in school, and we're having homecoming week. There's 70s Day, and I don't remember how I got talked into doing it, but my mom spent, I don't know, probably weeks making me this American Eagle jumpsuit, Elvis jumpsuit that I wore for 70s Day during homecoming week, and walking around school, and everybody's want to take pictures with Elvis, and then there was going to be a talent show.
Miss Miriam Summers still teaching there when you were there? Because she famously went on a date with Elvis back in the
right. Well, I certainly talked to Miss Miriam about that, but Miss Butler was there. Miss Kate Butler was.
Oh, cool.
Which she plays a very significant role here too, because after that day, she came to me and she said, "Hey, we're putting on a sock op. The drama club's putting on a sock op. Would you come dressed as a young Elvis?" And so I did. And towards the end of the night, where just about everybody was gone, there was a handful of people left. They put on an Elvis song, and we were all just dancing. And people were commenting like, "How are you moving like that? Like, how do you do that?" And I was like, "I don't know, I'm just dancing." You know, it was Elvis moves, I guess, but it was just how I danced.
So had you watched a bunch of video to figure that out, or was it just kind of
Not at that
natural, or
point.
how
I
did
mean,
it come
I had
about?
I had seen some Elvis footage certainly, but I hadn't studied it by any means. I mean, it was just, I guess, came natural to me. I don't know. And
Yeah,
ended up
because
getting,
for our younger viewers, it's probably worth pointing out. Again, we're talking about the '90s, the early 2000s, eventually here. This was pre-internet, so it wasn't like you could pull out your iPhone, jump on YouTube, and veg out on Elvis all day and be an expert by tomorrow.
yeah.
You were really probably starved for information at that point.
Yeah, matter of fact, there wasn't even a lot of stuff you could buy on VHS at that time. You know, this was before DVDs even, and so I
Right.
remember a VCR. I got some Elvis footage from somewhere when this is maybe a few years later, and having the remote with the dial on it. You remember that where you could fast forward
Oh
or like
yeah,
slow motion or rewind or so like.
absolutely, absolutely.
And so I
Yeah.
did study early on like that.
That's what the football coaches had to use for film
Yeah,
work back then. You would have been
yeah,
using that had you done the football thing.
exactly. Yeah. Uh,
That's what.
so at the sock hop, they ended up getting me to sing a little bit at the end of it, and I didn't think anything about it. I went back to school the next Monday. I was sitting in Coach Griegis's class, and somebody came and got me out of his class and brought me to the choir room and said, "Hey, Miss Butler says you can sing, so we're going to vocalize with the piano here and see if you can sing." And I don't know, I was in there about 5 minutes, and it was Mr. Lim. He was Mr. Wilson wasn't there that year. He came back my senior year, I think it was. But anyway, he was like, "You're in choir," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And so it was in the middle of the year, and so they had what they
Yeah.
call lunch bunch, which meant on your lunch break you went into the choir room and you were in choir for that half hour, and then the bell rang and you went to your next class. So I
Yeah.
did that. That was my junior year, and then my senior year, I had choir as a full
Mhm.
class, and every time we had some kind of little ensemble at school, like Christmas ensemble, I did Blue Christmas, and we had
Oh,
a
cool.
talent show, and I did an Elvis song and talent show, and it
Yeah.
just kind of started to snowball from there,
Well, shout out. You mentioned Coach Grigas as part of this, and I remember Coach Grigas. Well, first of all, what a great man. I mean, he came down from the Chicago area to play baseball at Southeastern. A lot of people don't know how great Coach Grigas was as a college athlete. I think he batted 330, 335, something like that over his career at Southeastern. Was a heck of a player. Might have even held some records there. Of course, he went on to be a legendary long-term basketball player here. But for those that never took his course, I just want to say one of the single best teachers I've ever had in my life. And I
Amen.
mean that on par with brilliant professors at Tulane University, law professors at LSU. PHS was stacked with kind of a murderer's row of great teachers back then, and you've named a few. But it's cool but he was really, really into American history and Elvis. And I remember on Elvis's birthday, we wouldn't study real stuff. We would
Yeah,
basically focus on Elvis the whole day. So
that was
how
part
cool
of
that he had played that role in your start, because
yeah,
I
that
know
was
that's
part of
something he really
his
cared about.
that was part of his speech on the first day of school. You're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
we do history every day in this class except one day, the King's
Yeah.
birthday."
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He was into it, man. So if anybody out there is, I haven't seen Coach Grigas in a few years. But anyway, just let him know some of his old gray bearded students remember him fondly. And
Yep.
it's cool to hear that he made that impact. I want to share a few other comments that are coming in here because the first lady also made an impact on you, and that's Miss Kathy Ezel Prine. And she says, Brandon, she's so proud of you and your accomplishments. And apparently she was your fourth grade teacher at DC Reeves, right?
He sure was. Yep, absolutely. Hey, Miss Kathy.
Cool,
Yes.
man. That's cool. You don't forget your fourth grade teacher. For me, it was Miss
No.
Harrison, and she was tough but fair, and we learned a lot from her. I want to go down the list here because a few other comments are coming in. Larry Macaluso III, another great performer. Why you talk about a talented guy there? But he says, you're Mr. Blue Suede Shoes and a natural at being Elvis.
Oh, Larry.
Larry, thank you for chiming in. I'm going to keep going here. We have Natalie Bates up next. She says she loved watching you at the Silver Slipper years ago. Don't worry, folks. We're going to ask Brandon about all the places he's played, casinos near and far. And then the next comment, the great one himself, our fire chief, Stormy Dean Joyner, he was like my big brother. We've been talking high school here lately, and this guy gave me a ride to and from school when I was a kid before I got my license. And I was about 5 feet tall, and he was as big then as he is now, and it was nice. It was like having some muscle there, so nobody would pick on the nerdy freshman. He says, "Hey, Stormy Dean, thank you for tuning in." And my pal Marshall Graves. Oh, good. We talking Grigas, and he heard us. Basketball people. Yeah. It's like a bat signal goes out. You mention a basketball person, and Marshall's got a telepathy about that. Folks, y'all know Marshall has been on the show along with other family members, and he's a dear friend of mine, and he comments from time to time. And I just want to take a quick moment to give a shout out to possibly the only Graves who hasn't been on my show, which is his son, Alan. Alan is currently one of the best basketball players in America. If you're not following America, I talked earlier in all earnestness about how Brandon became a national and international phenomenon and really did our little town proud by being famous and the best at something across the country and world. And Alan is doing that right now, folks. If you just Google him, go on Twitter, search him, whatever, and you will see that NBA scouts are clamoring to talk about him and where he ought to be drafted. He's, I think, now a 5-time freshman of the week for his conference, and I don't think any player at his school's ever done that before. I don't think anybody else had ever done it twice before Alan got there. And he goes to a good school, Steve Nash, J-Dub, Jalen Williams from the NBA. So, Marshall, thank you for coming. I'll circle back. I never did say your comment here, but Marshall says he saw Coach Grigas at the rec park running and doing lunges. Dude's still at it. Coach Grigas, man, he's a warrior. I remember all the girls in school were in love with Grigas. And look, he was working to keep it tight, ladies. Okay. It doesn't, God gave him gifts, but he's worked to keep them up. Larry's back says, Alan is balling right now. Larry, thank you. You're watching. And Marshall says, Brandon, that you're making us proud. And I know he thinks the world of you. How does it feel, Brandon, to have all these people, from your teachers to fellow performers who have been on national television and made us proud, to people like Marshall Graves that are virtually universally beloved in Ponchatoula? How does it feel when you see that kind of stuff coming in and these people giving you your props and goodwill?
It's really hard to describe. I don't know if there's a good enough word for it that really does justice, but it's what I love about our community is how we all care about one another, and even though we don't talk every day or see each other all the time, and if one of us in our community needs us for something, we'll be there for each other. We're there for support, and I saw that the most, which at a time where I thought we had grown to a place that wasn't Mayberry anymore, and maybe we had lost that little sparkle. And I'm taking this opportunity to say this because I don't think I've been able to do it, especially in a public way. But many people know that I lost my youngest son, a few years back, and
that was Nash, right?
Nash, yeah, and the support from our community, it was overwhelming. The love that you feel, that I felt, and just reassured me that even though we had grown in population, we still had that magic about our community. It just meant a whole lot to me and my entire family. So,
well, thank you for saying that. I cannot, of course, imagine how tough it must be to bring that up. But I want to say, Brandon, you and your family deserve that outpouring of love because you've always been there for us. I think back, and just the first of probably many examples that can come to mind, but another guy that we all love that's been on this show, Donald Burton. He's like a brother to me and probably to you too. And, thankfully he's been doing well. But when Donald was at his lowest health-wise, and you in the $1 Million Quartet didn't hesitate to step up and play and donate your time and very expensive, worthwhile services to help somebody. And that's something you've done time and time again. And before you, your parents, your grandparents. So thank you for sharing that, because you've kind of put a point on something that is Ponchatoula people care, and we're here for each other. And while we're growing, and while the streets are busy now and traffic, it's bumper to bumper and Walmart's packed. And if you walk in there, you might not recognize 9 out of the first 10 people you see. But when you really need something, these people are going to be there for you. If you've invested in this town, as you have, as Marshall has, as Coach Grigas has, all these people, Larry, that have chimed in, the teachers that have been on here, this town is here for you. It's funny. I think back, Marshall and I, he used to help me coach my kid, or I'd say he was doing the coaching. He helped me by coaching my kid a few years ago, and he would and Marshall's not a guy. He walk in the gym, and he can't leave because not only does he's got to coach my kid, but everybody in there probably rode his bus or knows him or whatever. So he gets stuck watching all these games. One day he literally fell asleep in the stands like that, right? And it's like some mama's over here, like, here, put your head on my lap or whatever, like people we take care of people is what I'm getting at here,
Yeah.
and I appreciate you bringing that up, man. That's really neat. Speaking of your dad, he's chimed in. He says, hey, Darren, a veteran of the show. Thank you for all you did to make this special man who he is. And Miss Cheryl McLaughlin. Miss Cheryl, hey, good to hear from you. She says you're her favorite Elvis.
Well,
mine too.
Thank you very much.
Well, I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that, Brandon. So, folks, if you're just joining us now, because we are getting a flurry of comments here, we're here with Brandon Bennett. We're talking about his career getting started as Elvis. Let's get to the point where he really popped. I mean, I don't remember the name of the contest or how it works or whatever, but I do remember there comes a point when you're essentially the number one ranked Elvis tribute artist in the world or whatever. You do whatever the big contest is, you win it. How's all that work? I mean, how does that work, and what was it like, and what did it feel like to ascend that mountaintop?
We were kind of blown away by it. Because first off, I didn't know that there was what we now call the whole Elvis world. There's a whole planet out there of tribute artists and Elvis fans and this, concerts.
And it's big business. There's a lot of money in it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had no idea that was the case. And so we found out about this contest. Mr. Tom Fletcher, who was in the fire department at that time. And I went to school with his daughter, Ashley, and he told my dad about it. Like, I heard about this contest in Memphis. And so we checked into it, and I had to go there and do a preliminary to see if I could be into the semifinals and then finals. And so we're thinking, I'd only been doing this a little while, we're just going to go see what this is about. And my dad and I drive to Memphis, and we tell everybody else, just stay at home. We'll, if we get past the first round, we'll let you know, and, lo and behold, that year, my very first year, I got second place. And I was the youngest. I forgot when that contest started, but it was back in the early 80s, I think, or late 70s that they started that contest. And it was run by Elvis's veterinarian. And
wow.
And so I was the youngest to ever even place in that contest.
And this is the legit second place. This isn't like the Ernest Hemming lookalike contest in Key West, where one guy gets first and everybody else ties for second.
Right.
You were really second out of all these guys. That's amazing.
And it was a worldwide competition. So the thing that I went to, we didn't find out about it until late. So it was the only chance I had to even get in it was to go to Memphis and compete there, like a last chance contest. But everybody else that was involved at that point had won a preliminary contest somewhere else in the world. So Japan, Germany, and there was representatives from every corner of the planet that were there. So so that was in 2001, I think. And 2002 we went back, and our community rallied behind me, and I think we brought 2 buses of people up to
wow. Hey, Graves, if you're still watching, y'all might have been lucky to have 2 buses going to that first state championship Allen won, man. 2 buses is a lot of people.
Yeah, it's just that's our community has been behind me from day one. I don't know how you ever repay that kind of support and love, but and so I think that year I won second again, and it was a thing that was had been told to me the first year was, don't get yourself down. You have to put in your time here. Like you don't just come here out of nowhere and become second place winner, And so I did that 2 years in a row, and I'm thinking, well, I still got to pay my dues, And so the following, so that was in 2000, 2001 second, 2000 second place, 2001 second place, 2002 I went.
Holy cow! So you're like the Mike Trout of Elvis, tribute artists, because it's like you just get right to it. It's like we're going to be in the MVP race every year. We're not waiting to pay our dues. That's wild, man. So did you get any pushback? Like some of these cats who'd been at it 10 years and are, that expect you to kind of do your time in the minors, so to speak. Was it all love, or was there kind of some haterade out there too?
I think it's funny. It's nobody was ever rude to me or treated me differently to my face. I did hear some stuff about, there's some talk around, but whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
That's great, man. So in year 3, that's really tremendous, man. That's really cool. And so what I recall, and again, this is all going down, I'm about 5 or 6 years older than you and Louis. So I go off to college and then law school and whatnot. But eventually, you were kind enough to be one of my very first clients. And I really enjoyed meeting with you and your dad. And you were off with like this real career that was, going places. And I remember being a bit shocked, like, holy cow, wait, there's this much money in Elvis? Like this,
Right.
I'm not going to go share your business here. It's confidential. But my point is, there was a little sticker shock and I'm like, good for Brandon. This is awesome. I would imagine that's when opportunities start really hopping, when you're like consistently on top. You're now the best in the world, for, like you said, from Japan, or, everybody's seeing you. How does this go from being kind of, fun to a career move? Because, in linear time, you're not that far from your whole family just laughing you out of the van, when you said I can do that. You're only talking about a few mere years later.
Yeah.
How does the career part of this take hold in terms of getting gigs and where you went, and eventually you're playing like, what I don't know if it's called residencies or whatever, casinos, but how does that flow at this point?
Well, I was 18, and we're lucky enough to live in an area where there are casinos and festivals,
right,
all over the place, between Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Mississippi Gulf Coast. Tunica's not that far away, and my dad is just one of those people who could talk to anybody, and he's not afraid to jump in there and learn some things. And I don't think that was our plan right away.
Yeah, hey, if only Elvis had a Colonel Parker in the house like you did, right?
Right.
Would have been a lot better off financially.
Yeah, because he never took any payment for any of it. He got some fringe benefits here and there, but he did it from his heart. He just got on the phone and started calling people, and it was really because I was so young. Nobody that was an agent in the business had room to take me on. They already had clients and they had been working with for years, and I was too young to work for that show that we saw in Branson where I said, oh, I think I can do that. I did an audition for them, but I was young, and so it was like, well, what do we do here? How do we get, and my dad just, he started making calls and asking questions and making friends with people and, learning the business. And that certainly helped me years down the road, where there were other guys in the business who had to use a manager because they didn't know some of the lingo and some of the contractual things, some of the things you can get from a place that it's no problem. You just, that's a part of it. They don't know that those kind of things to ask for or that you can get. And it's things that we learned because we kind of had to, and, so I was thankful for that. I didn't realize it at the time, but years down the road, I'm like, oh, well, you know what? I'm glad it went this way,
Yeah, what a blessing to have him looking out and to have that person who not only had the skills to make these deals happen, but to know 100% in your heart of heart that he has your interests. He's your dad. He loves you. He's what a blessing, because we see things like, wow, we watch movies and we Colonel Parker's getting half of Elvis's stuff. Like, holy crap! Talk about the least fair thing. I mean, can you imagine somebody getting half of Taylor Swift's money right now? Like, that's just the most ridiculous deals ever. But time and time again, these poor artists in history have been taken advantage of. And same thing in the athletic world, which is where you circle back to the Graves and Allen. Alan Graves is so lucky to have parents like he has, and a big brother like he has in Marshall, and a big sister like he has in Amora, who will look out for him on that front. I want to bring up a quote from a comment here from one of my favorite people around here, Miss Jeanette Garafola. Miss Jeanette says, "Hey, Brandon, I absolutely love you. I used to watch you when you go to the local assisted living homes. The residents would be so excited when they knew you were coming that night. One resident would always invite me because I volunteered my time to help her when she was in there. I really enjoyed watching you and thought you were great. You gave the people some happiness." Miss Jeanette, you're such a giver. It's no coincidence. She's a witness to you through her own service to the community. I mean, she and Mr. Nat, serve us so many ways, but that's really neat, man. Playing for these old folks, and Lord knows you're bringing back the glory days for them and Elvis, but probably wasn't the most fun thing to do in the world when you were 18 compared to the acting up you could have been doing with hooligan friends that we had back then. But good for you, Brandon. That's really cool, man. Is that something you did a lot over the years, or tell us about that part of your career?
That is definitely one of the things that I used to have the opportunity. And it's funny because I don't think I looked at it as that I was doing anything for anybody else. I certainly got paid a little something to do all of that at that time, and so I never felt like it was something I was doing for somebody else. I did obviously. I recognized the joy that these folks were having, and having conversations with them when I would be there, and then I started to realize the part of the entertainment industry that is so special is that you do something for people, and even though you're enjoying it, that they're getting joy out of it also, and it gives that back. It's like almost like you're double dipping as an entertainer, because you enjoy the love of it for yourself while you're doing it, and then you get to see other people's happiness, and then it gives you another load of joy. It's like, oh, this almost isn't fair that I get to to feel like this.
That's really cool, man. But so many artists, they struggle financially, and you're like, how do they keep getting up there? And it's like, well, they love the music, they love doing it, and then if you can get to a point where you can do it and get paid too, then wow, it's like wildfire. Got some more cool comments coming here. Miss Cheryl says she's back with a second comment. She says that her husband and she were on an Elvis cruise with you and about 7 other entertainers.
Yeah, I remember that.
We also had Patty Perry on board. One of the best times they ever had. Your dad is sharing some insight into how he got those deals done. He said delivered strawberries to the casinos in Shreveport.
That is true.
I'm loving it. Nothing closes a deal like a good flat of berries.
That's true.
He also says that June Waco told you thank you for the journey back in time. He says that was Elvis's girlfriend in Biloxi. Whoa, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And then we've got the high mayor here, man. You can get the fire chief and the mayor in the same episode, man. You're dealing in high cotton. But that's Wesley Daniels, our mayor, says Brandon's a great guy and a fabulous talent. However, his papa is your papa. Is his favorite Bennett. Loves Mr. Sonny. Wesley knows where the votes are. Mr. Sonny's the man. Folks, that's how you get elected with a landslide, the Wesley Daniels way. Mayor, thanks for checking in. It's
Thank
good
you,
to hear.
He's my favorite Bennett too. So.
He's everybody's favorite Bennett, man. We all love you, girl. Papa. He's a character, man. Yeah, well, while we got your dad, you kind of alluded to how great it was having a dad you could trust handle your business. Talk about the impact of Mr. Sonny and Darren, and how the kind of values they have, and the Bennett way they taught you. What'd you learn from them, I guess is what I'm getting at. And how does that carry forward with you as a father, as a man, and as a person who's putting so much good back into our community?
Well, my both my grandpa and my dad, they've taught me by not by just telling me or making me do something, but led by example. In hard work is important, and you get back what you put into something, and you don't just get handed something. It is I don't know how old I was when old enough to push a lawnmower, when it was like, hey, if you want this go-kart or whatever, like I'll help you get it, but you're going to work for and pay for some of it, and teach you about dollar, and that, what it takes to make that dollar. It doesn't come easy, and you can't just sit around and wait on it,
Yeah, you're living without entitlement. They're instilling ambition and work ethic in you instead of just laziness and entitlement.
So we actually were talking about this the other day. So I guess when I was 10, 11, 12 years old or something like that, which Levi, my other son, is 12 right now. And so he's just kind of at an age where it's like, you know what, it's time for me to start doing some things, for making some things that I had to do at his age. And one of the things that I had at that age, because I couldn't get a job, was too young to go get a job, a real job, eventually I worked at Hi-Ho, but I was too young to do that at that point. So, but I could go to
Shout
work.
out to Hi-Ho, that was the job. You, me, Wesley, Bree, we all did it, man. It's a good gig.
So I would work at the record yard, I'd cut grass over there, or, clean things up. And there's, the area where we work on the trucks and things, there's tools everywhere. And part of my job was to keep all of those tools and things straight and in place where they should be and all that. And I remember working really hard to get all of that in place. And it was like, 2 days later, I come back and it's all strode around again. And I'm frustrated, and I'm kind of griping about it. And like, I can't believe it's like I just fixed all this and it's all everywhere. And my grandpa was standing there and he just said, yeah, you know what they call that, huh? And I said, no. And he said, job security. And I had no answer for that. Well, good point.
That's great. That's great. Gotta love that wisdom, man. That's why he's the favorite Bennett.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this kind of reconnection, if you will. And I say it's weird to use a word like reconnection for a family that's been as close as yours forever, but as I understand it, you are now kind of reconnecting with your grandfather and father who founded Bennett's, Towing and Wrecker Service, and joining the business, you and your sister, and taking it to this third generation. Tell me, if you will, about that journey and kind of where you are in it.
Well, it's funny because if somebody had asked me, they started this business, the Bennett's Towing, when I was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And if somebody had asked me 10 or 15 years ago, and I know people did, and I don't, I think it may have been Trey Harris one day. It was like, hey man, when you gonna, go to work for your daddy? And I told him, like, if you see me in that truck, he's in trouble or I'm in trouble. like he's in a bind or I'm in a bind, Yeah.
That's
kind of how I felt about it. I don't know why. I was doing my own thing, I guess, but it's just never something I saw myself doing. And, as you get older, your priorities change, and you hopefully grow and learn, and things that become more important to you. And you see things that you didn't see when you were younger. And, I watched my dad work his butt off for a lot of years and build this business up. And I hated to see, like, he's not the kind of person that's ever going to retire. He's just not built that way. He's not going to want to work forever either,
Right.
So I hated to see something that was built with my family's name on it to just be closed down or sold or what have you. So I just thinking about it, and it just so excuse me, it just so happened that when COVID hit, that's when my mind started to change, because when COVID hit, I didn't have any work for a year. And I started thinking, like, what am I going to do? And if music doesn't come back, and
right. Because for a while that was a question mark. Would live events be like they were in the good old days?
Yeah. And so that's when I guess I really started thinking about it, and then realizing some of the stuff that I just said, and realizing how important that and what that meant to me, and what he had worked for, and what my family had worked for. And so as time has gone on here, just the opportunity just kind of fell right in place where it worked out. And my aunt retired, and my sister and I have jumped in there, and we've both been around it, the majority of our lives. But there was a lot of things that we didn't know, even though we were there. I've driven the truck here and there over the years. And matter of
Yeah.
fact, for a little time when I was in high school, that was one of my part-time jobs, is going to unlock cars, like, and I rode with my dad a lot over the years. And, so, there were things that I knew about the business, but there were also a lot of things that I didn't realize, on
Right.
the back end side of it, all the regulations and paperwork and, all that kind of thing that I've had to get my head around in the last 8 months. So, but
Well, you're a quick learner, and I have no doubt you and Taylor are going to thrive in that. But I would imagine it just means the world to your family to see this transition happening, to see a third generation, and kind of have the peace of mind to know whether you're, because whether your dad retires or not, because retirement doesn't have to be a switch on or off. It's
right.
usually kind of a throttle for a guy like your dad, and if he's throttling from 70 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour, if it's just him, it can't stay what it is. It falls behind. It devolves into something that may taint the legacy. But now that won't happen because you guys are going to keep it humming along, and that's just got to be such a great peace of mind and just kind of a heartwarming thing in your family, is it?
Yeah, I mean, and for me, the business, as is built on my grandparents' property that my great grandpa originally bought the first couple of acres, and they've added to it, and then the business got built on to it. My grandparents built their house there right on the side of my great grandparents' house, and then the business is built kind of behind that, and so I saw that place. I remember when it was nothing but a field back there and woods, and and seen it grow over the years. And when I go over there now, there's, especially the first few weeks I was there, even though I go there all the time before I worked there, I kind of saw myself like flashing back at some points and just remembering the stages of it and what it meant to my family, that every generation has added to and built something, and it meant a lot to me to just, there was no doubt the first official day at work when I drove in, something hit me right here, just like, this is where I'm supposed to be.
That's cool, man.
And
yeah,
I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I mean, I'm still singing, I still have gigs here and there, but it's funny how you can go from I'll never do that to I wouldn't do anywhere else.
yeah. Well, but it's a natural thing in life. It's kind of like, you've got kids a little older than mine, but you see these stages, and when it's your house, it's just a crazy day at the house. But when it's your friends' kids, it's easy to diagnose. It's like, oh, how old are they? Well, of course, whether you're talking terrible twos when they're little or teenage know-it-all or whatever, and it's like, that 16-year-old is going to think his dad's an idiot. But you also know, unless dad is an idiot, he's probably going to circle back when he's, 25 and start noticing his dad knows what he's talking about. And by the time he has a kid and real problems, he's going to think, oh, dad knows it all. And, just there are these, things in life that we have to live through. And you're not quite, as far into the middle age experiment as I am. You and Louie got a few years, enjoy those mid 40s while you can, boys, because the late 40s are a beast. But it's neat to see it, man. And just somebody who cares about your family and cares about you and have watched you come up. I'm really happy for you, because you just never know where it's going to end. And to be there working with the people you love on the family property that's been there forever is something special. I know Bree and I, we don't take for granted that we get to live here and work a couple blocks from mom and dad's house and live a couple blocks in the other direction from there. And I could go see my parents every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when they're drinking their morning coffee. And but you get the everyday effect, which some weeks may feel like too much, but not like it would have. It sounds like 10, 20 years ago. Brandon, I really appreciate your time and patience. We've run over probably 20 minutes or more. What else should folks know about you? As we kind of approach our ending here, what else should people know about you and what you do?
I don't know, Parker. I'm first and foremost a dad above everything else. I love my kids, and that's what I live for. That's what as you surely understand. And
No, you're a great dad. I hear that all the time, man. Yeah.
Well, I know that you know about being a dad. Like, you know, we live for our kids, and we make our decisions to what can benefit their lives first. You know, like what can we do for them, and that's just. I feel like that's my biggest blessing. I think that's the biggest blessing that God can give any of us as a child, and I had 4. So I don't know what I did to deserve those blessings, but I'm thankful for them, and I'm thankful for the community I live in, and the family I have, and the friends that I have, and I think that's just something I try to do every day is be thankful, because it's easy to get aggravated and mad and
right.
you know. So yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your story, especially the tough, you know, painful parts of it. You know, it's kind of weird to say this to a kind of little brother type who's younger than I am, and I, you know, saw come up, but I really admire you, Brandon. I admire the way you live your life. You know, you have always had, through the highs and lows of life, there's a character to you that's consistent, and there's a likability fact. I can see why Louis liked you so much growing up. I can see why your fans liked you so much. You know, wherever you go, I think behind it all, there's just an authenticity there that's real and likable. And so, thank you for sharing with that with us. Is there anything else on your mind, on your heart, anything at all you want to say before we go?
Not that I can think of. I'm sure I'll think about it later, but
well, hey, who knows? We can get you back on here for round 2. Yeah. So to our guest, Brandon Bennett, thank you for being with us here. We've really enjoyed your story. To the many people who shared comments, I thank you. That really added some zest to the episode. And to all of our listeners and watchers, thanks for sticking with us to the end. Oh, wait, one last minute comment. Oh, the beloved Lori Egnew-Hess, my old babysitter. Hey, Miss Lori. She says, Ponchatoula proud. Great interview, y'all. You know, wonderful woman there. You've got, I got to know, one thing I noticed about you, Brandon, wherever you go, not only do the ladies follow, but it's the wonderful, high quality ladies. You know, it's what my mom and dad might have called marriage material when they were raising me. You know, telling me what kind of women to you know, that's impressive. So, Lori, thank you for chiming in. But to everybody out there, thank you guys. It's been a great episode. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. And until then, we hope you do well. Y'all take care.
Thanks for having me, Parker.